Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowry.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Go to strengthguild.com, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to the Iron Radio collections, and we've got new shirts and new banners for you to support the show. Everything from just a regular banner, regular shirt, to ones with sayings on them, like Lonnie's Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree shirt. And some news for you, we're going to have some contests for people who own these shirts and things. So if you support the show, we'll let you more on that later. So if you get in on these early, you can be one of the first people to win some prizes. So thank you very much. Go check out the site, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to Iron Radio Collections and support the show.
Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry. I'm an exercise physiology and nutrition professor of about 20 years, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
This is Phil Stevens. I run Strength Guild, which is now officially open. And, I run Strength Guild, I'm a powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, and a bunch of other stuff. So,
hey, it's Dr. Mike T. Nelson, creator of the Flex Diet certification, associate professor of the Kerrigan Institute, and a bunch of other stuff.
Right on.
Yeah, Korey VanWyk. I am a exercise science and nutrition professor and strength and conditioning coach.
Perfect. Everybody, we've had Korey on before, and we're actually going to ask him some questions in the topic of the day. Look at that. I'm being good about it and actually bringing it up first so people can decide if they want it. We're going to ask Korey some similar questions that we asked MC Powers last week about, as a strength conditioning prof, at a university, how are they dealing with this whole mess of, the stay home and reopening and all of the above. We do have some news and mail. Let's start, in fact, with the mail. Phil, can you maybe just read some of the mail from Neil? He sent an interesting picture. Yeah.
So, Neil wrote, I remember a few years back an episode discussing observed gym equipment. Funny as hell, by the way. I was on Snapchat and I saw this contraption which you climb up 2 tall steps like climbing a tree. Then you lay down and do your leg presses. What the hell? How expensive is that heavy thing? Thought you and the crew would get a good laugh of it, and I cannot find in the life of me the brand name of the equipment on the internet. Yeah, I don't know what it is, man. I'm just trying to figure out how it works. It just has a picture of this dude climbing up this thing, and it looks a lot like a hammer strength piece of equipment, but I'm not sure. There's lots of bolts and intersections, and it looks like it does a lot of moving, but how, I don't know.
It's so tall. Korey, what's your take on this? I think it's so tall because it's got some kind of lever arm, and they just needed that much of a lever because he's like 4 feet off the ground.
Like, it looks like if he pushes back, will he kind of dip down or something? Like, he's so tall because his head is going to go towards the floor. I don't know.
Okay. Well, between you guys, I mean, if you don't know what the hell that does, I don't. It's just kind of funny. Yeah, it sounds like almost like a horizontal,
like supine hack squat or something.
Yeah, almost like like you're taking 2 steps at a time, like in a deep. Maybe is it a one leg thing? I don't know. It's interesting though.
It's hard to tell even which side his head goes on. There's 2 plates down there that look like maybe your shoulders could go on that, but I don't know. That might be where your feet go.
Yeah. It's a good point, Phil. We have some hammer stuff in bodybuilders that you got to look at it for a little while. Like you're like, And then, of course, people sometimes use it in reverse, sometimes because they don't know, but sometimes on purpose. I mean, I've actually used stuff like not on label, but it gets weird. Yeah, we should have people send us stuff,
A new post. Off-label exercise equipment use.
Yep. Off-label. That whole thing looks off-label. I don't think there's a label for it. Anyway.
Yeah.
Weird stuff. You know what? Maybe we can even post a picture of it on the Facebook page or something.
Yeah, I can put it up now. I'll put it up as we talk.
There we go. Okay. I have 2 pieces of news here. Let me start with some Iron Radio news. I just wanted to give a shout out. Thank you to Michael and Jacob, recent supporters of the show. Always appreciated. This first bit of news is very mechanistic, and I really want Mike to comment on this.
Strength and muscle sport news.
This is from Nature Reviews. The original article was Al-Bahrain, I think, and cell metabolism. This is brand new. In fact, it's not even out quite yet. It's June of this year. Obesity affects skeletal muscle ketone oxidation. So it says obesity induces alterations in carb, lipid, and protein metabolism that can contribute to type 2 diabetes. But of course, less is known about how obesity affects ketone oxidation. So essentially we're talking about how well your muscles burn ketone bodies. The author, John Usher, says, with more of the world's population willing to consider ketogenic dieting as a nutritional approach for weight loss and obesity, we thought it would be prudent, to take a look at this. During periods of fasting, the liver produces ketone bodies, beta-hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate, which of course can be burned as a fuel by your brain. Other tissues, though, like skeletal muscle, also can burn these ketone bodies as fuel. The rate-limiting enzyme for ketone body oxidation is, I'm not even going to read this whole word, it's SCOT, S-C-O-T, okay? The rate-limiting step in burning ketones in muscle, SCOT. So they used a mouse model of diet-induced obesity, notably compared with lean mice. Obese mice had substantially lower circulating levels of beta-hydroxybutyrate and increases in SCOT activity in skeletal muscle. So it looks like the fat mice are burning the ketone bodies more, and they wanted to know if that was problematic or not. They wanted to see if this was harmful or beneficial. So they started casting about for different antagonists of the SCOT enzyme, because if they can sort of slow it down or block it, maybe they'll get different metabolic effects. So they did some in vitro assays, ex vivo stuff with isolated working mouse hearts. Essentially, they identified pimozide. Pimozide it's already FDA approved for Tourette's syndrome, but it was in fact SCOT antagonistic. So it tended to block this enzyme that allows burning of ketones in muscle tissue. It says, to confirm the harmful effects of increased SCOT activity and skeletal muscle ketone oxidation in obesity, Usher and colleagues generated a skeletal muscle specific knockout mouse model. Okay, so these mice can't make this enzyme. And they took these knockout mice and the control mice, and they fed them a high-fat diet, essentially confirming the harmful effects of increased skeletal muscle ketone body oxidation in obesity. It says obese SCOT knockout mice also had improved glucose tolerance. The mechanism for the glycemic improvement following SCOT antagonism involved increased activity of PDH. So we talked about that before. Some of you nerds that listen, pyruvate dehydrogenase, sort of a linchpin that connects glycolysis with the Krebs cycle and, is going to affect the amount of glucose burning. Quote, because pimozide is already approved for use in humans, we were just talking about off-label, weren't we? We hope to work together with clinical researchers to determine whether our findings translate to humans with obesity and or type 2 diabetes, to confirm whether pimozide can be repurposed for these individuals, concludes Usher. Ideally, we would design pimozide-like compounds that do not cross the blood-brain barrier. And presumably he's saying that because you don't want to interfere with this as a fuel for your brain, but maybe you do want to interfere with it as a fuel for muscle. So I'm going to ask you to speculate, Mike. I know this is really putting you on the spot. You have no prep. I get it.
Yeah, I didn't even read the study.
I get it. But what would be bad if you can speculate about burning ketone bodies in muscle? It sounds like you want to have more in your blood and less ketone bodies being burned in muscle tissue. What would be better about having more in your blood?
I would look at what is the the rate limiter for function? Because it sounds like they had a harder time producing as many ketones. Is that correct, compared to the lean mice?
Yeah, essentially they're burning.
Block the muscle.
Yeah, they're blocking the muscle's ability to burn them because that's apparently bad.
I don't know if that's bad, but your body will do something very similar when you go on a ketogenic type diet. The muscle can become a little bit more insulin resistant to glucose. And that's a non-pathological insulin resistance at the muscle level, if you want to get really nerdy about it. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, per se. It's non-pathological. And that's just the fuel partitioning effect, right? Because if you go on a ketogenic diet, you've got a limited amount of ketones, you don't have much glucose. Yeah, obviously you're using some fat, but your brain wants glucose or ketones or potentially lactate. So by having the muscle be more insulin resistant to glucose, you can spare some of it more for the brain. So in theory, maybe they're trying to redirect more ketones to the brain. Maybe people might feel better, possibly. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's a negative effect of the muscle using more ketones, because it sounds like that would be one of the only fuels really left there. And then with the PDH change, if you're changing that, you can actually push more people to use more glucose. But there's some interesting research that's pretty well documented in cardiac tissue now, showing that I think we were at a talk years ago, Lonnie, where they were talking about, hey, we took this cardiac tissue and we made it more glucose dependent. Yay, isn't this amazing? We're like, that sounds like a horrible idea, right? You want cardiac tissue to burn everything, like fats, free fatty acids, pyruvate, lactate, glucose, like whatever. And when it starts having more like cardiac myopathies issues, the fuel selection that it can burn actually starts dropping off, right? So just if you go all the way back and go, okay, if I'm super stressed, what fuel is my body going to preferentially use if they're all around? It's going to be more carbohydrates. So maybe that was the result of the PDH enzyme change, that they're stressing the system and it's trying to use carbohydrates a little bit more then to mitigate some of that stress. But I don't know. It'd be interesting. I'm not trying to wrap my head around, other than it's just a interesting mechanistic study, the rationale for it. Last part, too, is that there's some data showing lean versus obese humans that if you put them on a 48-hour fast, the lean individuals were able to downregulate and use fats much faster than the obese people. So the obese people were metabolically inflexible. So maybe there's something like that going on with the fat mice on the ketogenic diet, which putting mice on a ketogenic diet and increasing their fat is a whole nother ball of wax too. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like they're toying with two things at the same time. And, these three-way models are very confusing and complex, but they're looking at obese versus lean with and without SCOT antagonists, right?
Yeah.
So, but it says they confirm the harmful effects of increased SCOT activity. So increased ketone body burning, they're saying that's harmful when it happens in skeletal muscle, because that takes place in obese people. Anyway,
did they just put them on a high-fat ketogenic diet, though? Wasn't that kind of the deal?
Well, that's what I mean. There's several manipulations going on here, but they seem to be concluding that blocking SCOT, blocking the enzymatic activity of muscle to burn ketones, is something that we want. That pimazide is already approved, and again, they want to work with clinical researchers to determine whether this translates to humans with obesity or type 2 diabetes. So, blocking.
I think it's interesting from a mechanistic standpoint, right? Because like you said, you can try to confirm what's actually going on, and hey, if we now take this thing out of the equation, what happens? But I don't know if I would think burning ketones, if there's a bunch of ketones around, you'd want to use them for fuel. Isn't that kind of the deal?
Yeah, they do say at the very end of this little report, this is not the full article, again, this is from Nature Reviews, it's a report on the article, right? The original article was in Cell Metabolism, but they do say basically they're trying to preserve ketones in the blood for the brain, right?
So they're trying to shift, maybe they're trying to do what the body naturally does, where they're just trying to shift that ketone use more to the brain and not have it be taken up by muscle, that
Right.
I could go with that.
Yeah.
That may make sense.
Yeah. And like you said, maybe it's simple. It's as simple as people feel better, they move around more, and they, in this case, it says they're going to have better glucose tolerance if they do this because of basically shifts in, homeostatic changes in metabolism and stuff. So anyway, yeah, it's
interesting. I'll definitely have to read it for sure.
Yeah, I brought it up because the whole idea of ketogenic diets, I mean, they're very popular, and a lot of fit people that are on keto, they're not obese to begin with. They're just trying to get even leaner sort of thing. But they're also using it for a lot of obese people, and these guys are trying to, tease this stuff apart. And I think it's interesting they're trying to use these off-label meds and block ketone burning in muscle, and, they say that's a good thing, that kind of stuff. I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah.
Again, mechanistic.
I'm guessing that med was approved to try to boost levels of ketones in the brain with them, I guess, for epileptics, but I don't know the mechanism of action on that. I'd have to look it up.
It says antipsychotic used in Tourette's syndrome. So, I don't know. Okay.
Interesting.
Well, a nerdy one for sure. This next one is something we speculated on recently, and here it is. We speculated correctly, it looks like. This is from David. Male coronavirus patients with low testosterone levels are more likely to die from COVID-19, according to a German study. Some highlights here. German hospital assessed the hormone levels of 45 COVID-19 patients in the ICU. They found that the vast majority of men had low T. Now, an aside already. I think if they're in the ICU, they're probably older anyway, and low T for any number of, they're under a whole lot of stress,
Yeah, stress.
Testosterone may be able to stop the body's immune system from going haywire, and low levels of the sex hormone are unable to regulate the body's immune response, leading to a cytokine storm. So just a couple of details here, and I appreciate David sending this. Again, I was just speculating, right, that why so many more old men get real sick. Like, more men get sick than women, and more old people than young people. Well, what's the common thread? Well, when you're really, an old guy has much less testosterone than a 20-something, Anyway, again, it was speculating at that point. Now there's some evidence. A recent study found men were twice as likely to die from the coronavirus, but clinicians were unsure why. And again, they looked at different hormones. They tested them for the hormones upon admission because they wanted to make sure that they weren't, it was nothing that, they were getting treated in a certain way that might have stressed them further or lowered their T or whatever. They assessed the first 45 lab-confirmed COVID-19 patients admitted to the ICU at University Medical Center Hamburg-Eppendorf. 35 were men, 10 were women. And there's some interesting side thing here about testosterone in women, too. 7 patients required oxygen during this study. 33 of them needed ventilation. 9 men and 3 women died in this cohort. Hormone levels were assessed again on the first day in the ICU. Of the male COVID-19 patients sent to the ICU at the German hospital, more than 2/3, 69%, recorded low testosterone levels. In contrast, the majority of female patients, 60%, had elevated testosterone levels. And the strange finding, I think, in women was that in female COVID-19 patients, higher testosterone levels were linked to more inflammation, a more significant inflammatory response. So testosterone seems to be helping men not get too inflamed. Because, of course, if it's going to prevent the cytokine storm, that's going to be good, right? I mean, you don't want massive uncontrolled inflammation seizing up your lungs and that sort of thing. And this jives with a lot of what I've understood about testosterone, right? Testosterone, one of its primary function is to point the metabolism a little bit more toward reproduction and away from immune response, right? So a slightly suppressed, if you will, immune response. Anyway, it might be something worth looking at if our listeners, if you're a guy and you're thinking about TRT, maybe it's a good time to go get your T levels up. And again, I think age is a confounder, and I wasn't able to find the age of these men, of these male patients. Again, this is just from Daily Mail in the UK. women who listen to the show, if you have very high testosterone levels for whatever reason, that might be a concern for you. Again, more pro-inflammatory. So, weird stuff. But yeah, confirming what we were speculating about just a couple of weeks ago. So, I don't know. It's almost like we know what we're talking about sometimes.
Yeah. Get lucky once in a while.
Right on. Just quickly before we go to break, let me just put you on the spot here, Korey. So what's been happening with you lately? Maybe just, you already gave everybody like a one-sentence descriptor of yourself, but
Sure.
Yeah, what's happened in the world of Korey?
Yeah, it's been crazy. We just finished up finals last week. And now, it's just kind of this crazy time. We've entered a period where students can somewhat appeal their grade. I don't know if Lonnie, if you know anything's happening it's because of the transition and trying to account for the fact that everyone's dealing with something just different and strange. Our college has kind of tried to give a little grace from that perspective. So we'll see how that goes and deal with that. But yeah, we transitioned online for the entire second half of the spring semester.
Yeah, us too. Mm-hmm.
Yep, and it was really strange because I felt like, we're isolated. I'm in Northwest Iowa, so, all this stuff hit us last. And it kind of, in the span of a couple of days, went from, start thinking about moving your classes online and how you would do it, to we're done for the rest of the semester face-to-face.
Yeah, get on it.
Yeah, and then our students came back from break already, from spring break. So they were back for a couple days, really, because we started midweek.
Okay.
And then got all sent home. And then we had to transfer our classes online in a week and get them ready to go. So that has kind of been my last few weeks. And then, of course, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. So I have 6 teams: football, wrestling, soccer, cheer, and dance. And all of a sudden you're figuring out how to train these people online or train. What are you going to do with 600 athletes that you have at your school? So,
right. Yes.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been challenging, and we'll talk about kind of the forced growth, but that's kind of been my world the past 8 weeks or so.
Yeah. Nationwide, I've heard some stuff. I believe it was from some universities in Chicago. The students were even wanting partial refunds because they're like, classes from home are no fun. I don't get to drink with the opposite sex and, and do all the kinds of social things. And
yeah, and for us, room and board, because everyone has to live on campus. All those conversations are happening.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with us. And we had a plan to, how we're going to be more lenient and more gracious with, changing things to maybe pass fail.
We've got stuff like that, like pass, low pass.
Right. Yeah.
There's an alteration in the grading scale, and then how that affects GPA and all that stuff.
Hey, we've said over the years many times, there are so many similarities between what the 3 co-hosts here do, right? Teaching and coaching, it's virtually the same thing, especially if you're teaching a lab section of Ex-Phys. People have mouthpieces and they're slobbering all over and, and nose clips and stuff. And at the same time in the gym, people are sweating and, exerting and moving around. And these are things that you have to do. It's no fun to watch a video of somebody else do these things, right? You have to go experience it. And so universities, my take on this is that we're just I heard California is going to stay online in the fall, as I understand it, but a lot of schools are saying, listen, we can't do that. We have to do stuff. So it looks like we might do something, a lot of schools actually, maybe divide up a class where, if I got a class of 40, I see half of them on Monday, half on Wednesday, maybe everybody's online on Friday. Some approach like that, some partial hybrid thing so the kids can still come to campus, the university still gets the revenues from living in the dorms, and the students, of course, get the college experience, which is a big part of why they're paying that tuition. So
right.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. I think, like I said, gyms and all these big fitness centers and universities, they're in a very similar situation where you're just going to do what you can with distancing and masks and Purell at every turn,
right,
and hope for the best, I guess. But anyway,
yeah, I've kind of maybe just like where this has changed things. I've felt like our discipline, meaning exercise science, kinesiology, in some ways this has been really beneficial for that field and profession, because as you hinted at, you can only do so much if you're watching somebody do it on a screen. And getting people, like, using your class time as almost a mini coaching session or like a mini seminar. So like I taught motor learning this semester, and we had just gotten to the point where we're going to start talking about, cueing and practice designs and practice schedules and all these other things. And class was going to be a lab. We're going to maybe take a skill and, okay, you read about specific types of cueing, internal, external, maybe different learning styles. And now we're going to have you teach someone else a skill with using those tactics. And it's just not the same when you get that online or when you're doing it over video. So I got the feeling that a lot of people are realizing, like, wow, this does have to be done face to face to a degree.
Yep.
Whereas maybe others don't.
It's for me, it's a return to this KSA model. Knowledge, skills, abilities. You don't pick up a skill by watching it, a physical skill, by watching it on a video, like pipetting.
Right.
Like, I have a video of how to do a fatty acid analysis, and blood triglycerides and fatty acids and stuff. But that doesn't make anybody a better pipetter. You're gonna suck when I say, here, I want you to pipette like 40 microliters of this or that. They watched it. They never did it.
Right.
And I got to think that's very similar in the weight room. Like, crap.
Yeah.
Anyway,
absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, we're gonna drift into the topic here already. So yeah, because when I say what's up with Korey recently, obviously this kind of stuff. It's just life. Anyway, all right. Let's go to break. When we come back, I've got some questions for you. Similar things that we asked MC last week, but you're in a little bit different setting, of course, and it'd be neat to sort of compare and contrast.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you know who this is. So I'm here to tell you about Dr. Mike T. Nelson's new book, Why You Should Eat Keto. I don't do it because, look at me, come on, I'm fabulous and I'm fantastic. Anyway, you should text the Keto ebook, all in one word, to 44222 to receive your free copy. Do it now!
Hey listeners, this is Dr. Lonnie Lowry. If you've ever had anyone critique you on your protein intake as part of your weightlifting lifestyle, oh, you poor meathead, all that extra protein is going to rot your kidneys or weaken your bones or dehydrate you or give you gout or who knows what. There is a book available. You could simply Google CRC Press and Lowry. And what I've done is reach out to experts all over the world and create a book, a single compendium that you can hold up and say, this is why I consume extra protein. This can be very valuable when you're being quote-unquote educated by various professionals on the topic. There's an enormous amount of literature in this book on the safety, the effectiveness, how protein works in cells, the history of protein and weight trainers, much more. So again, please check out CRC Press and Protein and Lowry. You can just Google that, and I do, full disclosure, I do make a small single-digit royalty on the book, but that's not why I did it. I did it so we can all have something, our particular population to both defend what we do and to inform our nutrition and our eating. Thanks. Iron Radio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go.
Like your weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more, that's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
All right, folks, we're back. It's Phil and Mike and Lonnie, and we have Coach Korey VanWyk, and we're going to just check in and see what a strength and conditioning coach at a university, what the hell they're doing right now for the past 2 months, and also as things start to reopen, summer training and all the kinds of stuff that, when you've got hundreds of athletes that you're responsible for, what the heck do you do? So, Korey, let's start with that. How have you adapted your coaching and training at the university?
Yeah. Well, I'll say kind of first off that our situation's pretty darn unique in the fact that we have a strength and conditioning major. So what that means is we have students who kind of go through this course progression, and it all culminates with our senior students, part of their capstone project, if you will, or their final project is they have a team for at least a semester. I mean, and obviously under our supervision, meaning myself and our other strength coach.
Yeah.
And so we had 5 of them this year, which is outstanding. And so, of course, they couldn't coach their teams face to face anymore. And so we kind of had them spearhead the delivery of training, where they kind of each took a day of the week and would write the training that we would disseminate through Instagram. So we used Instagram. Mm-hmm. We considered other platforms, because these online training platforms, they came out with, hey, for the next 4 weeks we'll let you have it for free or something like that. But we ultimately decided not to go that route, because those things have a huge learning curve to them. Not only for us as coaches, but for the athletes. All of a sudden 600 athletes have to learn how to do this online app and read it and all that kind of stuff. So we decided just to go through Instagram. We'd post every workout or every training session the night before, and our students would film all the videos, put that in the post. And so that's how we adapted the training. And it worked fairly well. I mean, our students are great. They had, I think as someone who's in the professional in this now, how beneficial that is for them, because they were forced to adapt and shift their mindset, communication style, and coaching right away. And they now have that experience if they ever need to do it again.
That's true.
Yeah. So is it ideal? Absolutely not. But from their learning perspective, there's a lot of benefits. It forced them to think out of the box, and us too. We are the ones helping them with the workouts and design them and figure out what are the things that they can do. But it was really cool to see them take the concepts and principles they've been taught over the past 2 to 3 years and then use those.
Now, let me, if I can clarify. So the students would post demos of the different movements. And I'm sorry if I missed this. So how are the athletes doing this? At home? These are just like calisthenic type things? I mean...
Yeah, it's at home. And, sometimes there's now that this is kind of everyone's situation, people get creative with like, okay, what can you use at home that is at least a little bit of load?
Wow.
Whether that's, we didn't go as far as this, but, some people are buying 5-gallon buckets and filling them up with stuff and using some kind of rod as a barbell. We didn't go that route. We just focused on the body weight stuff.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening, a lot of ISOs, a lot of slow, controlled, eccentric movements. What can you do in your backyard? So every athlete somewhat became, obviously it's their choice on whether they do it or not, but how can we add in sprint-based workouts or sprint-based sessions?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that's a lot of what ended up happening, or maybe like a lot of post-activation potentiation methods. So we're trying to maintain power without load.
Okay.
So maybe do like a body weight squat, do a 5-second hold on the bottom, rest for a minute or so, and then you've got jump squats, for maximum height, stuff like that, or split squat jumps.
Right.
Push-ups plus a hold, and then you go into plyo push-ups. That was what a lot of it became. And our students did a great job with it. They did a great job. So that's how we adapted training. And then, classes we kind of already talked about. I taught 3 of my 4 classes this semester were activity classes. So that
boy.
Yeah. When I had that week to transfer, I was like, okay. So I taught aerobic activity. So that was an interesting, and I feel like I came up with a pretty good way to do that. And Mike, it's interesting. You've been training people online for a long time, and I feel like all of us face-to-face coaches are finding out what online coaches have known for a long time, like how challenging it is. And while there's some freedoms with like online training, meaning like you can essentially do it whenever you want, wherever you want, but your level of communication has to elevate tremendously. And when someone's not face to face with you, and you're just communicating mostly via emails and via text, like you have to be way more clear and way more, there can't be any ambiguity or guesswork with it, because they can't, really, you've got to get your tone across, or you've got to get really what you mean across without the use of them seeing your body language or anything like that. So that one was, aerobic activity was the biggest one. And what I ended up doing is they just used like a fitness tracker app, and then they had requirements of what counted as attendance. So they had to like add me as a friend, post a picture 3 days a week.
Interesting.
Separate days. Tell me what the workout was, and like all these kind of levels to basically, because it's an activity attendance class. Like if we were face to face, you have to show up. Like that's the literal where the grade comes from.
Right.
Yeah, So that was one challenge. And then like the other big challenge, I kind of referenced motor learning earlier, but the other big challenge was I taught our intro level strength and conditioning class. And this class is basically fundamentals of training athletes. So it was kind of their first foray into learning the kind of major lifts, speed training, agility, plyometrics, like all of these different components that go into training an athlete. We cover that in this class. And what we do in class time is we do the stuff. So if 1 week is squat, class time we squat for an hour and 15 minutes. Like we're we're going through every variation, we're going through the coaching cues, and then it's like a seminar every week, right? And they're coaching each other up, and we're troubleshooting each other's technique and each other's form. Well, that was gone. We couldn't really do that anymore, because like even if we wanted to do it through video, people didn't have access to stuff. So the way I adapted that was we would have, like, we kind of got into the section of class where, the material is other coaches, right? So we would have the coach that their assignment was based off of join us for class. And I guess my trade-off there was networking. So, okay, you're not getting the practice, as we talked about earlier, with the skill anymore, but maybe now I'm starting to build your network up with, hey, this person you read the book chapter on or you watched the videos on, they're now going to join us for class. So different benefits there, but those are kind of some of the ways that I've adapted the class section. And I guess I'll kind of end it there if you guys have any questions or want to know any more on that front.
I want to spin this to Phil about something quickly, because first of all, the thought of, beefy Korey or Phil, like muscly guys doing all aerobics all the time, is funny to me. You poor bastards.
No.
But Phil, I mean, Korey brought up some very cool stuff that I don't think would have came to mind for me immediately, like, stretch reflex, plyos, PAP, all that neuromuscular explosion stuff. You can do that with body weight type stuff, or now I know you were talking about kettlebell stuff and more like high rep and conditioning type stuff. Did you have your people do any power stuff, or do you just figure we're going to work on an aerobic base, during this whole?
Man, it really depended on each person and what they had. So a lot of my people luckily had like racks and things at home where we could just keep going. So I mean, it was person to person. So it depends on the individual.
Okay.
And what they had.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was just kind of very cool, actually, Korey. That's very clever that you can actually, instead of just sort of being resigned to, if you are a beefy guy and you're all about size and strength, you're like, I don't want to just go for jogs every day. I mean,
and another thing we were trying to avoid was just like repping people to death. Like, you've got 30 bodyweight squats, or you've got 20 reps each leg split squat. So really kind of trying to challenge our students to think other ways to challenge either the movement or quality, and what are some different ways they can do that was just like a way that we tried to shift the focus versus just really just relying on tons of reps.
It's a difference, I think, between you and Phil. I know, Phil, you got basic, you got younger people there and stuff like that. But I mean, by definition, Korey's got a bunch of like 19 and 20-year-old. It's almost more developmental. Whereas Phil's, he's got some pretty advanced people. And what the hell do you do with them? It's just kind of a different animal.
I did the Zercher this challenge because you fast realize that, because I had a lot of clients who. I've got everyone who's got a complete full gym setup to someone who's just in an apartment in a foreign country with nothing else, So I found that things you could load became kind of a premium. So if someone had like those 5-gallon water jugs, that was awesome, right? Or we even had a thing where, hey, maybe you Zercher your spouse, right? Hold them in your crooks to your elbows and start doing squats, right? I put a thing on Facebook, and one of my clients sent a picture of him going to the park, Zercher squatting these huge potted plants there. I'm not sure if this is legal or not, but that was the video he sent.
Yeah, creative.
So, get creative.
Yeah, or just like do things that you're maybe should do and you don't do all the time, like a Zercher squat, or like another thing that we tried to think of was just, I guess you could call them stability exercises or control exercises. Just stuff that tends to get neglected when you've got a barbell and dumbbells. And then load overall is emphasized over, maybe like a piston squat or a pistol squat with a slow eccentric or a pause, and that the level of control that you need with like your knee, or the level of glute activation you get with that is different than with a barbell or a dumbbell. So that's kind of another area that we tried to hit on.
Yeah. Korey, I almost think it might be good for you to pop something on Instagram, or maybe we can put it on the Facebook page with like some suggestions for some of these neuromuscular things that people can do. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think it's great to basically try to build some volume right now too. Like, because I do have some dumbbells and a barbell downstairs, I've been doing some lightweight stuff, but do like 50 total reps, or 60 or 70, like just to get just more, because the way I tend to gravitate is fewer reps with a little bit heavier loads. And it's like I'm forcing myself to do some volume so I don't like atrophy into oblivion,
Right.
But so volume is good too. But yeah, it might be fun to look at some. I mean, because again, stretch reflex, plyos, post-activation potentiation, a pause and go, all this stuff is really good ideas for like neuromuscular explosiveness, even if the loads are really light. I mean, I remember looking at peak power output. In the bench press, it looks like it's around 50%. In the squat, depending on the research you look at, peak power output is between 0 load, I mean, other than your body weight, and 30%. Right?
Right.
So it doesn't require, if you really want to get that peak combination of speed strength, if you will, you can do some of that stuff at home,
Right.
It's very interesting stuff to me.
Yeah, and like other stuff that, my students would come up with, like loading up a backpack with books and putting it on backwards. Heck, that might get you to that in between 0 and 30%.
Yeah.
If you load it up and then you do jump squats with it or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely.
I liked your spot too, Korey, about working on control, right? So even have someone, I figured this out myself when I was writing stuff for clients. I'm like, oh, I haven't done a lot of lunges in a while. I should try a lunge with a little bit of elevation and just go really slow. I'll just start with body weight. I'm like, oh my God, I suck at this right now. Like, when's the last time I really did this? Oh, probably years ago. And when you force someone to go slow, they can't hide everything really with speed.
Speed hides need.
Yep. And wow. I mean, the clients would look at the program and they're like, come on, is this really what I'm doing? I'm like, nope, do this. Send me a video. Let me know how it went. And like most of the ones I had do it are like, oh my God, that's really hard. Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Exactly.
I've never heard that, Korey. Speed hides need. I'm embarrassed to admit, I've never heard that. That's great.
I'm gonna steal that one.
Yeah.
And like, what's really nice, Mike, about the slow, controlled tempo is, like, hopefully at the other side of this, you maybe have improved the pattern or positioning of a movement.
Yeah.
If you, it doesn't take much in a goblet squat. If you say, okay, you're going to do a 5 to 6 second lowering, and here's what I want you to like focus on or whatever, like give them like 1 or 2 cues to think about from a technique standpoint. I mean, I like, maybe you can use that to improve their technique when they do come back to a barbell or what, something like that. So that's another benefit that over the years, or really the past year, I've liked a ton about slowing the movement down, stuff like that. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. John Mike has said stuff before about how well eccentric stuff translates. It's not like it's going to be so hyper specific that it won't help your normal performance, so I like the idea of some of the eccentric stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I added pauses in with breathing too. I've done that a lot more if people are limited on load, or if they've got some movement stuff I can't quite figure out. It's like, okay, maybe you have a trap bar and you've got some load but not super heavy load. It's like, let's just take a period and deload it for a while. And at the top, instead of trying to, white knuckle it and look like your eyeballs are going to Valsalva and pop out of your forehead there, maybe you should just take 2 belly breaths at the top and then set it back down. And if you can't do that comfortably, then I want you to actually lighten the load. Right, so I want you to take a period of time and make sure you 100% own like every lift that you're executing, and then we'll scale you back up and use, appropriate tension again. And that's been pretty enlightening for a lot of people too, because especially when I see their videos and I see them start warming up with like, let's say they can do 315 on a deadlift and 135 looks like they're creating like so much tension that I think they're going to blow a vessel. I'm like, this isn't going to be good. Let's just kind of back down for a period of time and make sure we own this. And, when they go back up heavier again, they're like, wow, I can do more load and I don't have all these weird niggly injuries and everything feels easier. I'm like, oh, yeah.
That's a great one, Mike. That's another gold nugget is own it. Work on owning light loads. Yeah, I like it.
Eustress versus distress.
Right on.
If you can do eustress and then play with frequency, right? If you did 90% of your PR today, I started playing a lot more frequency. Can you used to be able to only do that once a week. Could you do that same thing twice a week? Could you do it almost every day? If you get to the point where you're hitting that literally almost every day, I know your max is going to be above that, right? Because now we've kept the quality high and we've just increased the volume per week too.
Yep.
Nice.
As we wind this down, I'm going to ask Phil one thing and then move to Korey about this is reopening. I mean, you started the show saying, woohoo, reopen. What's the first thing that's going to get your attention, Phil?
Just how happy people were. They come in last night. They were all elated. That's it. I mean, and we didn't have a ton. Like, we're keeping it under 10. That's our rule right now.
Okay.
So we're able to open, but no more than 10 people. And, like, no locker rooms and things like that, which I don't have anyway. So I got restroom, but they allow us to use the restroom. That was it. Just how I noticed that everybody came back, and they all want to be there, and they missed it. So, I mean, it's, other than that, nothing changed. It's just they were all just more than ready to be back.
Were they able to step back in? I mean, did you say, listen, guys, for the next month, we're just going to, or two, at least a couple of weeks, we're just going to do reconditioning stuff, or have they stayed?
No, they've stayed in shape. So all my people they're lifers. So they've all been doing stuff at home. I probably wouldn't say, let's max out, but they were prepared to do a regular training day. So,
okay.
Yep. Yeah, it was good.
How does that,
I'll go in there in a little bit.
How does that compare to universities, Korey? I mean, like summer workouts and stuff. Is it just you're going to more of the same, or are you going to try to reopen on some level, or when does that happen?
Like I said earlier, we're a small school, so we actually don't have any athletes that really stick around in the first place. So we are closed. Even, I guess, currently we are actually closed to everybody. So, like, if I'm following the rules, I'm not going in there, and I don't. But so we do have a little bit of time to get things, think about logistically how we want to do things and how we do want to reopen. So those conversations have just kind of started with regards to how we want to handle that, because we don't have a staff really that, our university fitness center has like a staff of people that manage it, so they can like disinfect a lot. Like, our weight room doesn't really have that. It's just me and our other coach basically right now. As far as like summer training, so like I just sent out summer training yesterday to our teams, and you try to with like your methods make like kind of a natural lead in ramp up. But I really just tried to say, guys, resist the quote unquote, I want to see where I am at max out session. Like, do not go for, even like with this, all this stuff that we talked about earlier with how we've disseminated like training, even if they've done all of it, that's not a good idea.
Right.
So I just try to make that abundantly clear that do not do this kind of like classic, hey, I'm going to quote unquote see where I'm at and max out. We've luckily done a lot of RPE training with my upperclassmen over the past few years, so they get it. Like, they know if I say 5 to 6 RPE on a scale of 1 to 10, they know what that means.
Yeah.
So there's some of that language in there, or some of them have even done reps in reserve.
Quantify.
So if I yeah, exactly. Like, or my main recommendation was, as you get started, reps should feel smooth, and there should be very little slowdown in the speed of the movement, as to try to okay, what if they're either don't remember what RPE means, or still want a little bit more direction on how it should feel. That was my recommendation. Yeah, we're gonna have a huge challenge when we get back to training, because while we have a big weight room, we typically, when I train football, that's 50 people in the room.
Right.
So I don't know and we only train people 5:30 to 7 a.m. and then 3-ish to about 6:37. And that's just not a lot of time to get, a few hundred athletes through. So we're honestly, we're still figuring that out. I don't exactly know what that's going to look like when we return. So
right, yeah.
TBD, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I think universities everywhere we're still in these focus group, working group discussion phase, oh my God, what are we going to do? We do have this breathing room a little bit. I mean, yes. I guess big schools don't have as much because of summer workouts or whatever they're going to do. But yeah, there's going to be a pause, at least a little, that we can kind of figure out what's best, I guess, with this stuff. But okay, we're basically out of time. But I want to do a quick fire with everybody, on a 10 scale, because everybody, when we were talking off mic, so to speak, not recording, Korey said his training's been going great. So I'm going to start with,
Yep.
let's start with you, on a 10 scale. I don't know, maybe give me a word and a number, hypertrophy 9. I'm kicking ass, something like that. Can you give me a word and a number for your training over the last 6 weeks? Korey.
It's been consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been a 9.
Wow.
Yeah, it's benefit of I've got power blocks that go to 90 and 5-pound increments. I've got a physio ball. I've got bands. I mean, I've got almost everything I need. So I just pop down to the basement, and it's almost like going back to the early days of you just go to your basement and you just crush a muscle group.
Yep.
For an hour.
Right.
It's been great. It's been fun.
That's nice. Well, that's good news. It's positive.
Yeah.
Phil, I know you're a specialist and whatnot. What about you? A word and a number to describe your training for the last 6 weeks?
Yeah, well, if I go 6 weeks, it would be rehab, and 9.
Hey,
it's been going good. I went from not squatting for 13 weeks to I've been back. This will be week number 3, but last week I squatted 635.
Wow.
So
nice.
2 weeks back.
Not a problem with there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike, what about you? A word and a number?
I would say aerobic grip, if that's 2 words, but probably 10 out of a 10.
It's hyphenated.
Yeah, hyphenated. Yeah, I mean, realistically, this is the most effective training period I've probably ever had, probably because I'm at home and sleeping in the same bed every night and eating food. So I've increased my aerobic times. Max grip lifts have gone up, and I've been in a caloric deficit too. So normally there's no way I could pull those 3 off at the same time. I'd be destroyed.
Oh, right. Yeah. So you're getting ripped too.
Well, getting down. I mean, this morning was 214, which is the lightest I've been in probably 12 years, maybe. And the highest I've ever been is 245.
Hot damn.
So,
yeah, you guys are outperforming me. I've just been trying to maintain with, sort of a modest, we'll say my descriptor would be frequency volume 6, I mean, it's not in the toilet, but right now I did volume incline bench work yesterday, just real light, but many, many dozens of reps. And I'm so sore across my upper pecs and front delts. So I'm just trying to do that kind of stuff, really, But yeah, for me, it's more like a 6. Maybe listeners, you can think about for you, what's a descriptor and what's a number for you for the past month or two, to kind of judge how you're going to relaunch when you do. Anyway, well, thanks for joining us, Korey.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Korey.
Yeah, you bet. This, I'll be honest, guys, this is a bucket list item for me to be kind of I've been on the show before, but never as a solo guest. So very excited. Thank you guys. I think Lonnie and this show has been instrumental in my career path, because like when I was a student and like listening to this and getting into it and back in like 2009, I found this group of people that cared just as much about thinking deeply about training and the science of training as I did. And I can't tell you how much I'm like how thankful I am for this podcast, because it really set me down this path of being a pracademic. And so I hope that, I guess maybe this episode helps other people do that too.
Well, we appreciate that for sure. I mean, let's face it, we banked on the fact that there are enough. Now, you're rare, Korey, but we banked on the fact that there are enough eggheads/meatheads out there, right, to listen to a show. And there are, as it turns out.
Yeah.
So, good stuff. Okay, everybody, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Awesome. See you.
Hey listeners, have you seen the store at IronRadio.org? There are 3 halls in the store. One for Phil, one for Fortress, and one for myself, Dr. Lowry, and they're thematic. So you can go into our Halls of Iron store and choose based on your goal. If you need something to learn or read or something nutritional, you can look in my store, Lonnie's store. If you want something about injury prevention or competition, then take a look at Phil's Hall of Iron. And if you want something about motivation or daily training, Fortress's Hall has what you're looking for. There are some fun, heroic descriptors as you browse through the stores. We try to make it a little more fun than the average boring online store. And whether you're a novice lifter or someone more experienced, you can take heart that you're not wasting your time. The things that we put in each Hall of Iron are actually based on our own recommendations. Protein powders that we know to be good, knee sleeves, wraps of some kind, things that Fortress uses in his own training. The stuff you see, is good. This way you don't waste time. So check out the Iron Radio store at ironradio.org and let us know what you think on the forums, and certainly you can request products and we will screen them before they go in. So thanks for listening. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.